Well, hi, thanks for joining me. I'm Brent Finnamore. Welcome to part two of Virtual Influence. You got to watch part one if you haven't yet, because we talk about the four things you have to unlearn in order to be a great influencer in a virtual environment. And without those four things clear in your mind, the next video, this last part, part two of two, won't be as impactful for you. So go ahead and watch that if you haven't yet. If you have watched it, welcome back. Again, virtual influence, three key competencies to bond, persuade, lead, sell, and collaborate in a virtual environment. So now that we've unlearned the four things in part one and understood the limitations and the new assumptions we have to make, we're now ready to go ahead with the actual skills of influence. We're going to learn how to build mutually rewarding relationships virtually. We're going to learn how to build trust virtually and how to develop top-notch communication skills for the virtual environment. And there are three of those that we're going to master. But first, we have got to cover some fundamentals for virtual influence. Before you even begin to try to be excellent at influencing others, again, whether it is a prospect, a customer, an employee, or a teammate, or a colleague, or anyone else in your life, there are a few fundamental things that are the root, that are the foundation we have to master first. And it's not even about mastering, it's just a simple thing, simple check that I often find people need. I'm sorry to say, but look at these two pictures, okay? Picture one and picture two. Which of these people already has more influence before they even speak? One of them, the lighting's wrong. One, the lighting's right. One of them, the camera angle's the wrong height. In one of them, the camera angle's right. So let's start with some of those fundamentals. And one more thing, in one of them, it's neck up. In the next one, it's chest up or shoulders up so that there's more gesturing room. So first, when you want to influence others, turn your camera on. This should be obvious. Sometimes we don't feel like it, or we say, well, the other person doesn't have theirs on. Turn yours on anyway. If it's a critical conversation and you want to send more impact to the other person, they've got to be able to see you, or you lose 93% of your communication impact, as we learned in part one. Second, get your lighting right. Lighting is very important. You don't want to show shades on your face or you don't look your best. And second, people can't read your expressions, your positive, reinforcing, friendly expressions. Third thing, show below your shoulders so you have the opportunity to use gestures and use your hands as body language. Research shows when you emphasize something, it's heard better. And sometimes that's the kind of communication we need. Next, hide your self window or you'll spend time looking at it. And when you're looking at your self window, then you're not looking at the camera. And when you're not looking at the camera, you're not gazing, you're not making eye contact. And that's critical to get and hold people's attention and show your sincerity about a certain point. Get your camera height and angle right. Your camera needs to be eye level. If it's lower than eye level, you'll be looking down. Sorry, it'll look like this. You're looking, you ever see people do this? It's not okay. It's no good. It's not a good look and it doesn't give you influence. So make sure your camera, so put a box under it if you need to, not a problem. And look into your camera when making a point or when showing concern or showing attentiveness. I know it doesn't feel natural. You want to look at the person's video. But remember, we're trying to have a great impact on the other person. That's our objective here. Number 7, use an earbud or a mic for quality voice projection. Make sure it's not echoey and tinny, and make sure you have a good quality mic so people can hear all of your paralanguage, your nonverbal communication, your voice qualities. And number 8, don't actually worry about mild interruptions. They make us more human and likable. I was on a video call not long ago, and the guy had to pick up his dog. He picked up his dog and said, sorry about this. I said, Barry, it's great. I love that you're doing this. It makes you more of a human being. It was endearing. I was on another call recently, and a guy's daughter with a little baby was walking in the background. And you know what? It was sweet. These kinds of little interruptions, not excessive ones or too often, don't let them make you nervous. Don't let them make you feel like you've lost rapport. You've done the opposite. You've shown your relatability. Okay, Once you've got these things down, now you're able to make a good impression. So all the things we're going to learn in this part 2 video are going to count all the more. Okay? Let's talk about building mutually rewarding relationships virtually. How important are relationships to you? For people who have always put a lot of value on relationships, those people are doing better in virtual than the people who have never put a lot of value in relationships, because the relationship's more important than ever before. You've probably read that, you've heard that, maybe you've experienced that, and it's true. It's because we don't meet face to face as often anymore, or in some cases at all, and because we lose about half of our interpersonal impact on video calls, like we learned in part 1. You've got to focus on the relationship first and foremost. It is priority 1. It's priority 1. It's never been priority 1 before. That's new and it's essential. If you ask me, it always has, but people didn't do it, but now they have no choice. So now it's priority 1. You have to make it, and this is the key, because you say, well, Brent, I already do this. No, no, no. You have to make it a deliberate, actionable goal. It can't be something you just let evolve naturally anymore. Well, we have enough conversations, eventually we get to know each other. Nope, not virtually. Nope, doesn't work that way. Not, we lose too much of our influence, and video conversations are too awkward. This is the most important practice of the 3 that we're going to cover today. I mean, do you want to have a greater ease of communication with other people? Do you want to have more trust? More information shared? Better reception of bad news? You know, they take the bad news better. More want people to be more responsive and more helpful for you, teammates, colleagues? Do you want greater honesty and transparency between you and another person? A greater commitment to deliver on promises? Do you want a better quality of life, period? Question mark. Relationships give you all these things and more. The key is to create mutually rewarding relationships, which means they have to feel good to both parties, which means every relationship will be different because some people are more into it than others, and some people develop them differently than others do. Individual differences, cultural differences. So here are the components of a relationship. Social psychologists tell us mutual disclosure. That's a fancy word for knowing stuff about each other. Mutual trust. Shared values and interests. Kind of obvious, some of these, right? And finally, chemistry, which means, does it feel icky to talk to the other person, or does it feel good to talk to the other person? Is it draining and exhausting, or does it make you feel good, even energized? Those 4 things, how can we cultivate those? So more than ever before, every interaction you have with others has to include building and maintaining or even strengthening the relationship. That's with your employees if you're a manager, with your prospects if you sell, with your customers if you're a service professional, with your colleagues, and with teammates. And here's the key. Nothing you do in your day must damage or diminish the relationship, because it's harder to get it back. So here are some tips. First, deliberately share little bits about yourself here and there. This is a powerful thing that you can do. Just say, so let's get into the meeting. By the way, I didn't ask you about your weekend. I had a great weekend. I did some barbecuing and cooked up some nice big burgers for my kids. Now you're done. Now move on. Now, why do you do that? Why share little bits about yourself here and there and just sprinkle it a few seconds here and a few seconds there? Why? Because A, they find you more human, even if they don't reciprocate. People say, well, I share and then they don't share back, so I stop sharing. Don't stop sharing. Stay at it. Think of it as pepper. A little goes a long way. Always pepper it, a little here, a little there. And the key is a little. Share a little bit about yourself every here and there. And the second thing that can happen is, besides you seeming more human, because you are, the other thing that happens is, of course, they'll often reciprocate. Someone might say, oh, yeah, I did something with my kids this weekend too. Now a door's open. You can say, oh, you have kids. That's wonderful. What are their ages? And now you're into mutual disclosure. You're getting to know things about each other outside of work, and it's so critical for the relationship. Next, deliberately, and again, the word here is deliberately. Deliberately ask general but safe questions, and listen for open doors. And when a door opens, always go in. You know, you say to someone, wow, it's pretty cold, huh? These days, I find it pretty cold. Is it cold where you are? Do you mind the cold? And they say, oh, I don't mind it, but my horses hate it. Look what that question gave you. Horses. Wow, I didn't know you have horses. How many do you have? What are their names? How old are they? How do you ever travel when you gotta, how do you get a babysitter for a horse? You can have a quick conversation, just a few seconds. It's essential. Next time you talk to them, you can bring up their horses and you know their names. This builds trust. It creates bonds. It makes us, you both feel good. You know, plans for the weekend, or how was your weekend? I love the bike paths in St. Lazare. Do you enjoy them too? Oh, yeah, you bike? Oh, that's great. What do you have for a bike? And you talk and you build a rapport, perhaps. Or, you know, someone's talking about how hard it's been lately. Yeah, the past few months have been stressful. You're absolutely right. So tell me, what do you like to do to get away from it all? Then they might say, I like rock climbing. They might say, I like going for walks. They might say, I like drawing. I love to paint. You might find out something about their passion hobby. Again, we're looking for open doors and just pleasant conversation. I see the weather's been beautiful for you. Do you ever get a chance to enjoy it? Again, general questions, not, and general questions, right? Not, are you married? Do you have kids? Don't be too direct. That feels icky. Next, deliberately create opportunities for people to talk about their passions. No one feels better than when they're talking about their passions. They feel energized, and then they will call you charismatic, but you're the one who's getting them to talk. But they'll love you for it. And if you love people, and I hope you do, because you're one, and if you love people, you're going to really enjoy that few minutes of conversation while they talk about something they're passionate about. It makes you both feel good. Okay, a couple more quick tips. Take your time, but be steady and persistent, right? Don't send someone, you know, I'm going to send you over a questionnaire. Please fill it out with all your personal information. Take your time, sprinkle a little here. People should never feel like you're interviewing them. It should feel natural. So just a couple of questions here and there, and then move on. And next time you talk to them, ask a few more things, perhaps. Balance your own needs with concern for their well-being. This is important in relationship building and building trust. You know, you say, I need this for 5 o'clock if you can. Well, I've got to pick up my kids just after 5. Well, look, I really need this though. You know, that's not showing concern. That's being a jerk. Showing concern might be to say, well, look, I don't, this is important, it's critical, but I sure don't want you to miss your kids and leave them waiting. Do you have any suggestions what we could do? Balance your own needs. Don't be selfish with concern for their well-being, and you will greatly improve the relationship. Do the opposite, and this happens. Be sensitive and accommodating to cultural and individual differences between people. In some cultures, people build relationships more readily and do it first in a conversation. In other cultures, less readily, and it comes later in a conversation. In some cultures, you have to spend enormous amounts of time together to build a friendship or a relationship. In others, not so much. So it's important. Then there's individual differences. Some people are very private. Some people are not. The key is don't judge. Don't say, well, they don't want to build a relationship, so they're a jerk. No, no judging. They're not a jerk. They're just private. And number two, they don't like me. It's not that they don't like you. They're just private. Just let it, don't make up any negative meaning. Let that be. Well, then what do I do? Well, then keep sprinkling little bits about yourself. Pepper here, pepper there. And let that evolve over time. Be patient. Another one is when you're building relationships, be a giver and a helper. Look for ways to help a person, to support them within some objective they have, connecting with another person, giving them a reference or a website to help them get information they need. Reciprocity is important, the give and take in a good relationship. So be a giver and a helper. It'll come back. It'll come back to you. And email doesn't cut it. Forget email when it comes to relationship. You can't even maintain a relationship through email alone. You can only slow its deterioration. So email is no way to do it. There's got to be some video. And if there can't be face-to-face, which is ideal, then there at least has to be some video back and forth, not just email. So be careful of that. Email is efficient, but it's not effective when it comes to influence. Now, Those are some powerful, useful relationship tips that I've shared with people over the last 30 years and had enormous feedback on how powerful and effective it is. Now I'm going to help you to take it to a new level because in this day and age, in the digital age, we have to go even further. Top performing virtual influencers are taking lessons from the 80s and they're hoarding stamps and envelopes. Let me tell you what I mean. It's time to go old school, time to go retro. Even as you work to develop relationships, you're still not enjoying the benefits that come from being physically present as much anymore, right? You say, well, why is that a problem? Because do you ever notice how we're always more helpful to the person in the desk beside us or the cubicle beside us, than we are to the person overseas or the person we hardly ever see? Somehow, when we see a person, they're more real to us. When we've never met a person or they're remote or they're virtual, they don't seem to feel like as much of a priority to us. That's just human nature. It's unfortunate, you could say, but what can we do about it? Well, there is something. We're going to do. We're going to be sending some things. Watch this. How did we supplement face to face in the 80s? Let me tell you about the 80s. Most of you weren't there. I was. I wasn't working in a business yet, but I was there. And I'll tell you, all there was, in fact, even up until the early 90s, all there was fax, phone, and mail. Fax, even that was new, phone, and mail. That's how we supplemented face to face. There wasn't anything else. There was, of course, no email, no text, no video. We didn't have laptops. We certainly didn't have smartphones. We had very, very dumb phones. So there was actually no email. It didn't exist then, right? And in fact, that's why people sent birthday cards and memos and notes. They didn't just send a little e-message, happy birthday, happy holiday. So we relied on the mail. We supplemented face-to-face with handwritten notes, occasion cards, and small personalized gifts. That's what we used to do. So let's go back to it. Look, let me give you some examples. You send a handwritten note, a clipping, an occasion card. The card reads, congratulations on your new position. Welcome to motherhood. Best wishes in your son's new career. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Saw this article in Harvard Business Review and thought of you, right? Or a note reads, this tissue, enclosed, is for your tears since the playoffs are over. Ha ha. A little humor. Compare the impression that notes like this will make as opposed to a simple, boring email, right? You're creating physical presence. Now, you can go further. How about you send someone a book? You send someone a small gift, a small thing. We're not bribing. We're not doing none of that immoral, unethical. All we're doing is connecting. Send a small personalized gift here and there once in a while. It creates the perception to the other person, maybe they're a customer, that you're investing in the relationship. Does that sound like a good idea to you? Right? It's a compliment, and it leads to them unconsciously feeling fondness and the mild desire to reciprocate in some way. It makes you both feel good. Now, social gifts are also harder for your competition to imitate if you're in sales. Anyone can match a discount or send a mug with the logo, but not everyone knows that the customer, let's say, loves to cross country ski, and they send them a $20, $18 pair of smart wool socks with a handwritten note that says, enjoy the season, you can't have too many socks. I mean, boom. Relationship building to a new level and physical presence. Now, let's talk about how to build trust virtually. Let's start by saying it simply. Trust is the most precious currency that's ever exchanged between human beings in business. The most precious currency. What about money? No trust, no money. Give me a break. Top performers are able to sense other people's concerns, and then only then can they reassure them using empathy and transparency. You see, there are a number of areas of trust we need to be aware of and cultivate in others to have better influence. There's trust in you, and in a workplace situation, trust in your company. Trust in you is this, your character, which means, can I trust your intentions and motives, or are you out to take advantage of me? Are you showing me the real you, or are you being fake? Are you telling me the truth, or are you lying, exaggerating, omitting important information? Trust in you, your character. Now, you could trust someone's character, but still not trust their competence. Isn't that true? I know you're a good person, but you suck at your job, right? So now comes trust in your competence. That's something else we have to cultivate. Do you know what you're doing, or are you in over your head regarding your job and your work? Is your judgment sound, or are you too optimistic, too pessimistic, too inexperienced? Do you have the expertise and resources and means to deliver, or are you overpromising? You can trust someone's competence, but not their character. And you can trust someone's character, but not their competence. True? Then we have trust in your company, of course, your product, services, your value, and so on and so on. So, trust, there's a lot going on there. There are three pillars at least, right? So, if trust is the most precious currency in business, concern is the most devastating threat to a relationship or to a business. Concern. What is a concern? It's an unanswered, stressful question. It's an unanswered, stressful question. There can be unanswered questions, but they don't cause concern because the question isn't terribly stressful or important. A concern is an unanswered, stressful, wondering point. The customer or the colleague is wondering and they're worried and they're upset. Trust means their questions have been answered and they feel comfortable and satisfied with the answers. That process is called reassurance. So we want to be able to sense this because you can't fix what you don't know is broken. We want to provide this so we can enjoy this. Reassuring others is a skill set. It's more critical to your success in a virtual environment than at any other time. So, how did we used to reassure people? Well, we'd fly there or we'd drive there to meet them. Customers, colleagues, prospects, employees, right? We could build trust. The very fact that we invested in the trip showed them and reassured them. We used to do that all the time, and today we do that less. And remember what we said in part one, when people meet face to face, things happen inside their bodies. Oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, making feelings of trusting and bonding. And this is the bedrock of influence. And it's all reduced when you can't do that. So what are the ways we can reassure if we can't do that? Here's how. Number one, empathy. Empathy. It means being able to genuinely and sincerely take the mental perspective of another person. Here's how to cultivate empathy in yourself and also how to show it to the other person when you sense a concern. One, hear them out. Hear them out. Don't just say, I understand. That's not hearing them out. That's giving them a line of crap. Okay. Instead, you might say, let me see if I understand. What you're saying is this. Have I got that right? You see, whenever we say, got it, yep, I got it, yep, got it, what we're really saying is shut up, stop talking. You say, well, I don't mean it to be. Yes, you actually do. That is why you say it. Unconsciously or not, you want them to stop talking because you think you understand. Real reassurance and real trust building, especially in a virtual environment, you've got to not tell them you understand, but prove it. And the way you prove it is you hear them out and paraphrase. Once you've paraphrased, that means a brief summary. So what you're saying is this and this and this. Have I got that right? Empathy. That's hearing them out. Then you actually empathize and they say, well, yes, that's right. And you say, I can see why you'd feel that way. Or no wonder you're concerned. You're right, this is an issue. I'm glad you brought this up. You're right, it is important. This is how to show true empathy. Hearing them out and empathizing are the two skills missing for a lot of people. What a lot of people do is when they hear a concern, they go straight to the A and T. They ask questions, take action if necessary. Listen, I'm really concerned about your supplier capacity lately. Oh, well, what are your specific concerns? What are the things you need? Let me tell you what we're doing about it. What's your specific order number, please? And I'll see if it's an issue right now. No. I can appreciate your concern. I've been concerned as well. Here's what we're doing about it. To-doom, 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 right? Hear them out and empathize before you jump in. That's the heat method. But the other side of empathy, it's not enough. The other side is transparency. Empathy and transparency are how we build trust, especially in a virtual environment. Now, here's the problem with everyone's talking about transparency. It's the buzzword today. Am I right? Here's the thing. What no one's talking about is this. You have to know and understand something in the first place. In order to provide transparency, you have to know. Guess what? Your job is these days more than anything else. Go bug people until they tell you what you need to know so you can provide maximum transparency to your colleague or customer. I repeat, go bug the right people until they tell you what you need to know. And if they don't know, bug them to bug someone else until you have what you need in order to provide enough transparency to ease the concerns of other people and build and cultivate trust. In other words, what I'm trying to say is if you don't know, you suck. Go find out. Try harder. And don't give me any yeah buts. Yeah, but it's too hard. Yeah, but they don't know. Yeah, but I can't reach them. No, try harder. Or you can't build trust and you sacrifice influence. It's up to you. Try harder. And then tell them what you know and what you don't know and be honest and tell them what you're going to do. And this is key. Communicate what you know in a clear and kind and non-defensive manner. You can use humor sometimes, that's fine, but always clear and kind and a non-defensive. Well, that's not our fault. Well, that's not our problem. Be careful of that. In fact, here's what not to do. When someone is showing a concern, do not diminish, dismiss, or defend. Diminish. Oh, it's not a big deal. Dismiss. Well, there's nothing we can do about that anyway, so let's not worry about it. Or I have no idea. Oh, hey, I don't want to speculate. Well, you see, they do want you to speculate. They're concerned. Or defend. Worst one of all, perhaps. Well, that's not our fault. That's because of someone else. That's because of our suppliers. That's because of the such and such organization. That's because of Team B. These three things increase concern and erode trust, especially character trust. All right. And now we come to the third of the three key competencies. We've talked about how to build mutually rewarding relationships. Then we've looked at how to build trust and reassure with transparency, with empathy and transparency. And now we come to the third competency, which is building top-notch communication skills for the virtual environment. And there are three, and they are vital. One, you have to plan and engineer every meeting like a detail freak. So if you're already a detail freak, you're covered, you're good. If you're not, you've got to become a little bit more of one, okay? Two, you need to learn how to read the virtual room like you could a room before, like some of us could, and sense discomfort and sense deception in new ways. And finally, you have to be more thorough than ever before in planning deliverables with any of your historically unreliable suppliers. All these things because of the limited restrictions and constraints of virtual environment. So let's talk about the first one. Don't fly by the seat of your pants in a meeting. We just don't have control anymore. Virtual meetings, we have less impact, less influence, less control. During a meeting with a key person, an employee, with a boss, with a colleague, with a customer, with a prospect, that means that more can go wrong than ever before. And meetings can go off track and miss their mark more than ever before. So we have less power to wing it. In other words, don't fly by the seat of your pants. So here's what you need to do. First, set a clear, measurable goal for each and every meeting. Now, this has got to be specifically, what decisions do you want them to make? What conclusions do you want to reach? What step in a given process do you need to get to? Be specific. Then create a detailed agenda. Detailed. Remember, what is an agenda? An agenda is the list of decisions to reach the goal that you just created earlier. Meetings go off track. Well, maybe there's no track to begin with to stay on. An agenda is a track. And then watch the time. Your agenda should have timelines. Remember, we all have a limited amount of tolerance for a video call. So you've got to watch the time and keep things efficient in order to be effective. Spend a lot of time anticipating questions and concerns. Listen, when I'm talking to you in a meeting and you share a concern with me or you have a question, you know what I do in my head? In my head, not out loud, not obvious, I go like this. Thank you. Your question or concern was right on time. It's exactly what I thought you'd ask, and I'm ready with an answer. Be prepared. Anticipate. Do your homework on attendees. Who's attending the meeting? What are their objectives? What are their goals? What are they trying to achieve? Who's for your ideas? Who's against your ideas potentially? Who are your allies in a meeting? Do your homework on attendees. Again, all because we have less influence in a virtual environment. And plan all document sharing. There shouldn't be any surprises, and you got to make sure that what you do is compatible and they can easily download and view, or your share screen is working. And plan document sharing carefully so there's no embarrassing hiccups or frustrating delays and pauses. Now, the next thing we got to learn in terms of top-notch communication skills is how to read a virtual room. We do that in new ways than we ever did before with face-to-face. First, here are some warning signs to watch for. So the first one is watch for the quality of their answers, whether it's an employee or a colleague or a prospect or customer. If you're hearing a lot of 1 or 2 word answers, they're probably disengaged or distracted. That's not good. If they are genuinely interested in your subject, you should be hearing energized, wordier questions, answers to your questions. So their answers should be wordier, more energized. If they're not, there's a good chance you've got a problem. If you're a salesperson, you're sensing their answers are a flat, you're going to need to ask deeper, more penetrating questions. So do your homework and understand what kind of questions will light them up. If you're a manager and that's happening, you may need to do more to build trust and improve the relationship because they're not in a sharing mode for some reason. Here's some more. Another warning sign to watch for is the quality of their questions. People who are engaged and interested ask deeper, more meaningful questions that get to the heart of their needs and their interests. If you're not hearing smart, challenging questions and thoughtful questions, you can be sure you'll have to schedule another meeting because this one is absolutely bombing. Okay? Now, as a manager, if it's likely that your employee is either uninterested or they could be intimidated by you, so they're not asking deeper questions. So you need to ask some more good questions to get them to you'll need to ask some good questions to get them to share and open up and really to try to build trust, and then start watching for the quality of their communication. Next is their willingness to take next steps. Now, this is a simple idea, but it's particularly important in a sales environment, right? Or in a customer environment. You know you're in trouble if they're hesitant to set a next meeting. And you know how easy that is to do on things like Zoom and Teams and so on. If they don't want to exchange the required documents, take some next step. Then you'll know you're on the right track if they're already talking about next steps and are receptive to your attempts to reschedule or to schedule a next step. Remember this in all things and in all your work. In fact, write this down. Never let a conversation be over with a colleague or a customer without a clear next step and a timestamp. Without those things, there is no next step and nothing's going to happen. Right? The next thing to watch for is word fillers. So if you ask a straightforward question and they begin with like, well, that suggests they're not comfortable giving you a straight answer. If they could be hiding something. If they use word fillers like, it also suggests they're stalling for time. And so that's something to potentially read into. On the other hand, no one can communicate with perfect, uninterrupted perfection and flow. So you're looking for an excessive use of these devices. A small amount of well and can actually show that they're genuinely considering their answer, but it can also be a sign that they are kind of being evasive. So watch for that. Next one, though, that also some of these will combine, you see, if there's word fillers, but there's also a response time problem. So generally speaking, when people are telling the truth, they don't need time to craft their response. And so if they need to think about how they want to answer, that may mean their answer is not full, there's not full disclosure there. So watch for excessively long pauses. But remember, this varies across cultures too. So you're looking for excessive pause, and you're looking to take in culture into account as well. And then evasiveness. I mean, these three are a triple threat, right? The word fillers, the response time, and evasiveness. Now watch evasiveness. If they're avoiding your direct questions by answering your questions with questions, or by giving answers that don't address your actual question. You see that in the news and interviews all the time, right? Then they are hiding something. Now, of course, in a business conversation, there's often a degree of evasiveness as people try to negotiate. So you're going to have to decide for yourself if the evasiveness is excessive or it's just a normal part of the game. But when you see a combination of those three warning signs, then you know you need to take different measures. Okay, the third communication piece. This is our last piece on this subject of virtual influence. How do you assess the reliability of commitments from and suppliers um, and colleagues? You see, if someone has a history of being unreliable, then you have to be more thorough than ever before to make sure that whatever they tell you actually comes true. One of my favorite questions to ask a group of people in a classroom is, how many of you have unreliable suppliers? And, all the hands go up. Yes, 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 yes. And I say, look, here's how to fix that. What we're going to do here is talk about how to fix it with an eye toward the virtual. So the problem is you don't have the same impact virtually in order to emphasize and impart on them what's needed and why it's so important. And you can't read them as effectively and sense their level of commitment, or if they're undercommitting or trying to get rid of you, brushing you off, or if they're overpromising. It's harder to sense those things than it was before. So an interesting thing to think about, though, before we start is, why do we have unreliable suppliers? Because it almost sounds like an insult. Well, it's not at all. No, maybe your request is unrealistic. So get to know capacity better. Or maybe you failed to manage the customer's expectations and you're passing your stress on, you know. So manage expectations with the customer. Or maybe their job is broken. Maybe they don't have enough capacity, they don't have enough supply, they don't have enough people, they can't meet the demand for some constraint, some process reason. The processes are broken. Maybe their job's broken. Some jobs are widowmakers. They chew and spit talented people out. Or maybe they underperform. So maybe their job sucks, or maybe they suck. That is possible, but it's just not the first thing to think of, right? But you're going to use the special procedure I'm going to show you next in these cases. And or there's one more. Maybe they don't like you. Remember, don't pass your stress on. Don't be a jerk. Always treat your suppliers as if you'll need their help tomorrow. Remember what we said earlier, never do anything that damages the relationship. We also said, share your needs, balance your needs with concern for others. So here's what you do. You're talking to your colleague and you say, what kind of commitment can we make for our customer? Now, isn't that better than saying, here's what I need. Go get me this. Can you get me this? I need this by Thursday. I need that by Friday. I need you in Chicago. I need to. Instead of telling, why not share the story of what's going on and what's the need and what's at stake, and then ask some questions like, what kind of commitment do you think we can make for our customer in a customer example? And then you might say, in case they ask, what's your confidence level? How confident are you that we can have that by that date? And you're looking for a percentage or a number. Now, if they say, well, 100%, 100%, and you're like, you've said that before. Then you might say, that's great. Hey, can I ask what makes you that confident? You see the power of that question? You're politely testing. You're not being naive. If their confidence is low, let's say below 80%, because you don't want to go to a colleague or a customer with a commitment that's less than 80% confident, or it's 20% or more of luck and crossing your fingers, and we're not supposed to do that in a business trust environment. So if it's low, below 80, you need to say, well, I appreciate you sharing that. Tell me, what do you think needs to happen in order to improve on that? Do we need to escalate? Do we need to push out a date? Do we need to go have this meeting, that meeting, and find out what's needed? Then you might say, for our customer update, can I ask what's your first critical step? And maybe they'll say, what do you mean? You say, that step where things can take a turn, where things can go bad or things can go good. What's the first critical step? And if I could know that, then I can inform our customer and keep them up to date. And so they say, here's the first critical step. And you say, and when would you say we'd be able to have that first step done? Great. And what's your confidence level for that first step in case our colleague asks? Great. Well, why don't we set up a check-in for that first step? And by the way, can you think of anything that might jeopardize that first step? And if so, what kind of plan B can we make to stay on date? See, folks, what these are is it's you having a convince me conversation. Your job is to be convinced. Okay? Now, either mentally or on paper, what you've just done is you've assembled a plan of action that has dates and gates with your supplier, right? So it might look something like this. Here's day 0 when you're meeting. You just had your meeting. And now they've committed to day 3 for that first critical step. So there it is. And then day 10 is when they said they'll have the overall deliverable. Just making this up here, just pretending. But you would have some kind of a diagram or a chart or a mental model in your mind or on paper. Well, what happens if that first critical step meeting happens and they haven't finished? You say, well, how do we get back on track? No, that's what everyone says. No, it's the last thing you do. The first thing you say is, what happened? Did we miscommunicate? See, give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't start with your dander up and your back flexed and I can't believe you did that. That'll hurt the relationship. And so, what happened? Did we miscommunicate? I'm confused. The next thing is, how do we prevent this from happening again? How can I help? What do we do so this doesn't happen again and doesn't keep happening? And then number 3, what do we do now to get back on track with this specific deliverable? And so you have those conversations. So, a quick summary then. We have the fundamentals, right? Camera angle, video on, lighting, all those things. Then we have build mutually rewarding relationships virtually. So make relationships a deliberate goal. Remember, mutual disclosure, shared values, chemistry. We want to cultivate those things. Send handwritten notes, clippings. Send small, occasional personalized gifts with special notes on them based on your knowledge of their passion, hobbies, and the open door interests. Build trust virtually, and that's all about hear them out, empathize, ask questions, take action. So that's empathy, and then on the other side, transparency. And remember, you have to know before you can tell and share with transparency. So the first part of your job is to know and go bug the right people so that you know, so you can then assure and build trust. And avoid the 3Ds: diminishing, dismissing, and defending. You do those and you suck, right? And then we have our top-notch communication skills. First one is be an engineer for meetings. Be meticulous. Next is to read the virtual room and sense discomfort. So look for the warning signs that we talked about. And then finally, be thorough and meticulous with your capacity planning and commitment making with your colleagues in this virtual environment. And of course, I know it's very subtle, but you'll see, watch this video again and share it with colleagues. It's important to watch it again so it absorbs and sinks in. And share it with your colleagues so you all get better at influencing one another and all work flows better. Remember, influence makes the world a better place. I try to at least help make companies a better place by helping them with customer service, experience, virtual selling, B2B selling, maximizing productivity, leading change. I do lots of things for companies, been doing it for close to 30 years, and I'd love to help you if I can. You can reach me through my website or simply dropping me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Keep watching my videos, and thanks. Bye.